Hey everybody, welcome to I Love This Flick, the podcast, and which we love flicks. I'm Josh Pfizer,
I'm Tanner Randall.
and I just got my ass handed to me by Tanner just now.
Two
Uh,
hands, just cupping him up right up into his face.
you took that much more literal than I thought deserved. Um, but yeah, I'm Josh Pfizer. He's Tanner Randall. I think we said that. But yeah, we're back for the first time in months.
Months.
And I'm pretty sure this is going to be a video exclusive episode. Just by virtue of the fact that why not? We're just talking about shit, and you might as well see our uh soy boy faces while you do that.
It's
Um,
true. I'm as soy boy as you can get.
yeah, and now you can see all the Funko figurines. And what is that puppet behind you? Like I haven't seen that one
That's
before.
Greg. That's Gregory Lampwuzzle.
Okay, I don't know that reference.
Why would you? He's my puppet. That's his name.
Mm. So it's just a puppet
It's my
that you
puppet.
you own.
His name's
Okay,
Gregory Lampwuzzle. He's an old
Gregory.
TV show host. Um, he is from a different time. He's I would argue he's problematic in many ways.
Is this your like conduit into like the un PC things that you think but can't say?
So I have and I joke slightly, but this actually might be something you would be interested in maybe doing with me. The idea of having a satirical right-wing puppet show has crossed my mind many times, of having like a weird QAnon puppet in my house. Doing it as like a live show. It would be fun. It would be of things I would be interested in doing.
I'll have to. That does sound interesting. Um, yeah, QAnon recently has specifically gotten to a point where it's yeah, I don't know, like all that right, like it is so crazy right now, especially given the fact that Alex Jones just has to pay more than $1 billion to the family of Sandy Hook, and we still got Marjorie Taylor Greene doing like weird like shit, but still like being a top donor for the Republican Party, and Kanye West just going just full on to honestly where we always thought he would end up. Like, let's not pretend like any of this is surprising. I'm just surprised that it took him this long to get there.
Yeah. Um, Curse the people who are taking advantage of a man who's mentally unwell.
Yeah,
Is one element. Mental illness doesn't justify anti-Semitism and hate. It's all
no,
bad. Everything's bad.
yeah. He
Truly a
also
terrible world.
yeah he and not to because he's obviously mentally ill, but also like he's also somebody who early on refused to get help because he believed that would stifle his creativity, which I'm sorry, his every album after since Life of Pablo has been dog shit.
Even
uh
beyond that, the myth of the troubled artist is just
yeah,
that. It is a myth. Healthy people have made equally, if not better, art. Nobody has to be an asshole and an artist. Um, we don't need more Christian Bales. We just don't need more of them. We don't need
yeah,
more Mel Gibsons. We don't
yeah,
need. They exist. They can exist. We don't need to keep perpetuating that as an okay or like
we don't
acceptable thing.
we don't need any more David O. Russells, especially.
We don't need the one.
Yeah, we don't need the. I. It's just one of those things where I never really. I always thought he was okay, but thought like the hype around him was always a little bit too. I think I always thought he was a bit too overrated. Not a lot, but a little bit. And
Um, yeah, I mean the it look this is going to be a terrible thing to say on a movie podcast, but the similarities in the fandom between him and Nolan are stark. I don't even like Christopher Nolan movies that much, but he has talent in spades compared to David O. Russell. So but like it's one of those like, ugh, those fandoms sure do make these people intolerable. But then add on top of that also being a terrible
Yeah.
person, like, oh, like at least with Nolan, he only writes his women characters terribly. He isn't known for
Yeah.
treating them terribly on
I
set. Like,
I've heard some assholish things about Christopher Nolan, but like
wouldn't
compared
surprise me.
to, yeah. Well, I mean, mainly because I think one of the things is he doesn't allow people to sit on his sets, like nobody, no crew, no cast, and it, um, and knowing how long those shoots go for, that is, it's one of those things. I forget who uh I was listening to a podcast. They were talking about a director's first movie, and who actually the guy passed out because he was so exhausted because he didn't sit down during the shoots. This is a regular day like that. Like people kind of, you know, don't realize how, because it is like for a lot of people a dream job, but it's still a job. It's still physically working.
With
Uh,
notoriously shitty working conditions and
yes,
hours. Like problematically so to this day, people don't get shot on jobs with good working conditions.
yeah.
That's just not a thing that happens.
No, no, absolutely not. But yeah, the Hollywood is terrible, which is why we are now denouncing movies in general. This is no longer going to be a movie podcast.
Hey, I can pivot to video games where the working conditions are
A
worse.
okay.
Somehow worse.
Yeah, and it only. I think my thing, and mainly because I am somebody outside of the video game, fandom, I guess you could say something like that. It's just that,
It's culture. I wouldn't even say it's fandom. I mean,
yeah,
it's literally the most
yeah,
popular form of entertainment in the world right now, just from a more people participate in it than watch movie. Like it's just the numbers are
yeah,
leaning one direction. So at this point, it is as culturally relevant as a movie or sports, I guess would
yeah.
be another good comparison.
Oh no, for sure. But I think like I don't hear about the adverse abuse in that industry unless it's surrounded by a game that has glitched so much that will point out the hours that those people worked, and not just, hey, they do this on good games too. Like I know like Red Dead Redemption 2, one of my favorite games, had a controversy when it came out because they had terrible working condition. They had crunch. What was it? Crunch out, something like that.
Crunch is the
Yeah,
term. Yep.
crunch time. Yeah, so it is honestly, and we only like vaguely talk about Stanley Kubrick these days being a shitty dude because like then people are, oh, but you can't say that because it'll, you got to separate the art from the artist or whatever, and then it doesn't come up again because they don't want to tarnish The Shining or something.
Yeah, we're going right into deeper stuff
Yeah.
than what I was planning on this episode.
Oh,
I'll say I am deep in Kubrick right now,
oh
because
yeah.
the movie podcast I love has been doing Kubrick,
Mm.
right? Like so, I've been watching all of them along with him. I skipped Lolita, of course, but I've watched all the other ones.
Yeah, I'm at
Um,
least curious about Lolita. I've listened to maybe half of the audiobook. And it's, when I got into it, I was just like, okay, I'll go to see how this text, why people, so what are the subtle things that people latch onto to think that to believe Humber, what's the protagonist's name? Is it like Humber Humbert or something like that? It's something silly like that. But it's not ambiguous. Like you can tell right away in the text that, oh yeah, he's a piece of shit and he's just making it sound like he's that she seduced him or something like that, or he has some like great philosophical reason for it. But when you can definitely tell, like, oh no, that's a bunch of bullshit. He is hyping himself up this way to justify his terrible, terrible actions.
Yeah, anyone who thinks there's much ambiguity in that story has not read it.
Yeah.
Like it is
Well,
pretty
it's not
unambiguous.
even that. Like there are critics at the time, major academics that were saying this stuff. Like it's not even like, oh, you didn't, it's not just people who didn't read it. It's I think still back then and maybe and to a lesser extent now, but still there. Just how we view female sexuality and the sexuality of young children. Uh,
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes.
I have no way to follow up the phrase sexuality of young children. There's nothing I can say to um get out of that grave. It's
It's not,
Halloween, so I'm gonna make spooky references about that pit.
but no, it's more about us and our society. As Joaquin Phoenix would say, we live in a society, and the society still isn't very good at dealing with that kind of stuff when it comes to really anybody.
Correct. And the Kubrick of it all is just it's very
That particularly, the fact that he was aware of what was happening to the actress and his producing partner, uh, you know, at the time is one of the biggest damning things about Kubrick.
uh yeah, yeah. There's nothing I'm going to say that's going to sound good, so I'm not going to say any of the words that are about to come out of my mouth. What I will say is
The Shining's great.
I don't suppose they told you anything in Denver about the tragedy we had up here during the winter of 1970? I hired a man named Charles Grady as the winter caretaker. From what I've been told, I mean, he seemed like a completely normal individual. But at some point during the winter, he must have suffered some kind of a complete mental breakdown. He ran amok and killed his family with an axe.
Well, you can rest assured, Mr. Ullman, that's not going to happen with me.
That's right.
Mom, do you really want to go and live in that hotel for the winter?
Sure I do. It'll be lots of fun.
The only thing that can get a bit trying up here during the winter is the tremendous sense of isolation.
Is there something bad here?
I fear you will have to deal with this matter in the harshest possible way.
I do that I killed you and Danny.
You did this to him, didn't you?
I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains. Here's Johnny.
all of them are great. There's not a bad really movie made in there. Like they're all um unbelievable films. And so it's hard to talk about because it would be like finding out, oh yeah, Da Vinci also diddled kids all the time. All right, but like look at the art he made. Right, like at some point it is there's a hard disconnect, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, like, I have the luxury of not liking Woody Allen movies. But I can imagine how that would be terrible if,
Yeah.
let's say, you for some reason liked Woody Allen movies and,
I
like had to reckon with that. Or
I haven't watched one in a long time, but I will say I did love Annie Hall. I Even before like the major allegations against Woody Allen came out, like I was still weirded out by Manhattan. Um,
Sure. This all seems like a very gross way to start an episode of a podcast.
is there any good way to start a episode of a podcast? This is a medium that should not exist. It has given people it was given some weird people, present company included, platforms for bad takes. So
Yeah, then they become permanent and make it harder to demonstrate growth. As people. Anyway, rape's bad. Don't date your cousins. Jerry Lee Lewis died.
Oh
He was
yeah,
a
that's right. That
pedophile.
yeah.
So
I
maybe don't honor a guy who wasn't that important to rock and roll, in any
yeah.
way at all. Anything
It,
he did, Little Richard did better, so it's irrelevant. We can all just ignore it.
yeah. I genuinely thought he had already died. So
Oh, we
I
should have been so lucky.
then we don't have to go through the discourse
So much
anymore.
discourse. It's all discourse. But here's my discourse to you. We're at the end of October. I have watched almost no I have watched my spooky classics, right? I'm gonna anyone who's listened to previous spooky season episodes of our podcast, you're about to hear a whole bunch of things you've already heard. I've watched The Thing, I've watched my Alien,
Right.
I watched my Halloween, I watched Sleepaway Camp, because it's fun.
It is. It's
It's
one
just
of
too
the
fun.
it's a slasher sleepaway camp. I used to be of the opinion that the only real reason that people knew it, and it's still kind of true, is the twist ending. Um, but in all honesty, though, like it's a weird low budget thing that a lot of things are just like, wait, what? What the fuck was that?
Yeah, and I would argue, so as somebody who only saw it for the first time within the last maybe 14 months, like I am new to it. I've always known the twist ending, right? I am horror adjacent enough. I grew up watching classic slasher movies for obvious reasons. This was one I was not shown as a child. But I knew the twist ending, but the twist ending is legitimately one of the least insane things about that movie.
Yes.
Like, it does come out of nowhere and it is crazy, but there's so much crazier things that happened before then that doesn't feel like out of the blue by the time you've gotten to that point of the movie. The tone is the queer stuff in it was a thing I did not like. I did not realize this was going to be such a queer positive movie. It pretty much is.
It's more positive than
any other movie in
most.
that era would have
Yeah.
been. It doesn't really seem to make judgments of the dads, I guess I will call them.
I do think that there is a little bit of a implication that a part of why um what's the girl's name in that anyway, the reason the girl is messed up is because she saw that, but those scenes in any case are so out of whack.
Well, and
that
here's the counter 2022 argument to that take. You could also interpret it as she lived in a house that was open and accepting enough that she got to grow up to be the person she wanted to be because people were open to that as an option.
I feel like that's a little too generous, given
Maybe the other way is a little too cynical.
Okay, I guess so. But one of the craziest parts is of that movie is towards the beginning, one of the lunch guys, one of the cooks, says to the other cooks as they're watching the kids get off the bus. Yeah, back something back where I come from, we call those chickies or something like that. In a very much like, oh yeah, this guy's a pedophile. And that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is everybody just laughs it off. It's just like, oh, this guy. And by the way, even crazier, the guy in the scene that's laughing it off, James Earl Jones's dad.
I mean, it's truly great that the thing that's delightful about that movie is like it does do the thing where like it makes all the people who get killed like people you want to get killed. Which is always a fun thing, especially in a slasher movie. There's the classics, but the genre as a whole is let's punish a bunch of shitty kids. Obviously they're not all that. Halloween is not exactly that, but like as a genre, that is just what the genre tends to lean to in the most corny tropey ways. But this one was fun because it makes the people super shitty. Again, I don't even think that's as crazy as the godmother aunt. Every line of dialogue or thing or acting choice that person makes is the craziest choice. Like,
yes, that's
why the movie is fun. It's because like it's not just like bad, it's like community theater people literally giving it 199% somehow, and it's intense and uncomfortable and really funny, but like full of heart,
they
yeah.
make choices. They might be the wrong choices, but do they make choices?
Richard, Angela! Oh, here you are. Look what I did. I packed you and your cousin some goodies for the ride up to camp. Wasn't that nice of me?
Any chips?
Why, of course. I believe there's a whole bag.
Why, I'm almost sure of it.
But that's like a delight. So like I've watched my classic. I've watched The Addams Family. That's a big one in our house. I've watched Over the Garden Wall, which I again cannot over highlight. Every human being should watch Over the Garden Wall.
Did you watch The Munsters yet?
I have not watched The Munsters yet.
Okay.
I have been working through Cabinet of Curiosities.
Is that any good?
I have watched one episode so far, and I want it to jump to a specific one because there is one episode that is adapting a story, like directly adapting an H.P. Lovecraft story. And it starred Ben Barnes and Crispin Glover. And I was like, I just want to watch this one real quick. Like all of those are things I like. I like Crispin Glover. I like Ben Barnes. I like H.P. Lovecraft. And I watched it, and I don't like the way things look on Netflix. It is upsetting to my eyes because although we're kind of roughly talking horror, I've watched a lot of good movies recently, and good movies I have bought on physical media, and then watching a digital streaming thing that looks so flat. So like I just watched Barry Lyndon, right, going through all my Kubrick movies, which is like the only Kubrick movie besides Lolita I had not seen. And guess what? It might be my favorite. Like I fucking it was so good. And it is a gorgeous movie. Obviously it's notorious because like it's lit by natural lighting. So like the scenes where it's a candle lit mansion, it is literally lit by candles, and they had to figure out how to film that. But beyond that, there's just giant battles, and like it's just Kubrick's movies look pretty. We just watched The Shining, right? Like his movies look good. And then you watch something like this that is like H.P. Lovecraft, and there's some cool monsters, and there's some neat scares, and there's some like good, I watched a guy get his head sawed off while he's still alive, right? In like some dream sequence. And I'm like, oh, the practical effect of this, like it looks good. Like but it all looks flat. And there's just like a lack of depth to it that like I just found boring. It just visually doesn't tickle my eyes. Like there's not enough visually engaging to get me to stop looking at my phone.
Right. And I think a lot of that, part of that is there's just a lot of modern movies are just kind of too dark to see. I don't know what that phenomenon is, but like that is a thing, and it's a known thing.
Well, and I guess the other thing is it's not even just that it's too dark, it's that everything's too dark, and then the things that are dark aren't black. Like
it's just a weird gray.
It's one of those things that it's noticeable. I mean, I truly think Halloween has like the best example of this. But like I have the 4K disc of Halloween, the original Halloween. Right. And there's the iconic shot where like Michael Myers' mask kind of comes out of the shadow in like that closet. And then like right behind Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, and it is noticeable when I watch it on streaming, when I'm too lazy to put in a disc, that scene looks different. That like just the way you compress files and stream them is different than the way you compress on a physical disc, right? So it's literally a technological thing somehow that like we just haven't figured out how to fix.
Isn't that what happened with that Game of Thrones episode? Everybody
No, that's what they said happened with that Game of Thrones episode, but people who have watched House of Dragon know they just don't know how to light this. Like they haven't figured it out because they're running into the same problems now on the show where it's like just always so fucking dark. And because it's green screen, right? It's just, this becomes the issue of not having sets and doing everything in post. So you're trying to match, and then it's harder to compensate for compression over streaming. It's just more difficult of a thing to do, especially because it's all produced for streaming now. So it's not like there's a reference point. It's not like you can look at a 70 millimeter print of The Shining and like color correct a digital copy, right?
Mhm.
Because there
Yeah.
is no original. This is what it looked like. It's just, oh, we can literally tweak something the day before it goes up. We can literally color correct a scene. We can literally paint out a coffee cup, and no one, and like the episode never disappeared. Like it was just, yep, one time you watched it, there was a coffee cup in the scene, and then the next time you watched it, it wasn't. It's terrible. It's horrible. I hate it. It's like living in a weird dystopian nightmare where you can just change reality at all the time, and I hate it. Anyway, spooky month. Ooh, the horrors of existentialism.
Um, yeah, I'll also say just one more thing on this. I think that, and this comes from like, I think the 2000s getting more serious with cinema. So everything kind of had to be darker and there was just less color. And that's where we're at right now, is just like most movies have less color. Um, Noticeably because I primarily have kept to the 80s with my Halloween viewing. And by God, the colors in horror movies, by the way, these are horror movies that are meant to be dark thematically. That should tell you you don't need your fucking movie to be dark and colorless throughout it. Um,
Well, all of my preamble was to ask you a question, which is, are there any of the recent horror movies I should still try to watch? For example, I haven't watched Nope. Barbarian just hit streaming services. Should I try to watch Pearl and X? Should I
Now,
have you gone into any of those? And I would love
not
to
a
hear about
lot.
them.
Yeah, not a lot of modern ones. I will say Nope is still my top five in my top five of this year. So yeah, definitely that's a movie you need to watch. Especially if you're a Jordan Peele fan. I personally think it's his best movie. Um, but I've also heard people say like, yeah, I just didn't like it, which is fine too. But it's yeah, for me, it's his best.
Here's my question about it. I've heard a lot of comparisons to like it's his most Spielbergy movie. Which
Well, he's even said like Close Encounters was a huge influence, and I think also it's obvious that Jaws is as well.
so is it less scary than his other movies and more like a kind of thrilling set piecey kind of
it's
jaunty,
both.
like it's a blockbuster, like it is.
Yeah.
It is by design and by themes of what I believe the movie are trying to say. It is inherently trying to be a summer blockbuster, like that is
Yeah.
just literally what it's trying to be. But is it truly that scary?
It is, but it's also thrilling. That's I think that's the biggest comparison it has to Jaws is, there's debate of whether Jaws is a horror movie, but it is undeniable with every watch of the movie that it is frightening at a lot of times.
Yeah.
And
People
I
are
would
in
say,
peril
yeah,
the
I would say
whole
it's
movie.
yeah, I would say it's both Nope and Jaws are horror action movies, horror
Okay.
adventure movies. I think would be a good way to put it. There's other ones that are similar. I think a lot of giant monster movies go into that same um same thing. I would say like, Godzilla's and King Kong's kind of
The
go into the
Host.
yeah, go into the horror action adventure when they're not just advertly, silly and fun, goofy types. But yeah, it's scary. It is scary. I do believe. I haven't caught up on a lot of other horror movies. I would say I saw X. I was disappointed by X because I'm a Ty West fan. I don't think the script was there. I think they had a lot of great ideas. It's a good love letter to horror filmmaking. But there, it a lot of it did seem, and I haven't seen Pearl yet either. So it does seem like a lot of it is, but I heard good things about Pearl. But the stuff, it seems like a lot of X is set up for Pearl and the next movie they're going to be making, which I'm assuming is Mia Goth's character from X in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's what it like, because what it appears like now is like each one is almost lampooning era of film, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
from what I can tell, like they're just straight up doing like parodies of different genres, or not genres. It's all horror genre, but like it's all of the time period, whatever it is taking place in, which
yeah,
is cool.
X has some blatant ripoffs of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Shining, um Eaten Alive. Just it's kind of obvious what they're doing to a point where I don't, I won't say, like I said ripoff, but yeah, that's exact. It's obvious like what they're doing. They're paying homage to these
Yeah,
things.
it's not quite
I
satire or parody, but it is knowing, it is tongue in cheek. It is aware.
Yeah, but I do think like that's part of the reason why um they seem less concerned with the actual story than anything. The kills are cool. The kills are really cool, but yeah, leaving the theater, it just kind of left me cold. Especially with the reveal at the very end, which is unnecessary. But yeah, other than that, I really haven't seen much else. I would say Resurrection with uh not Emily Blunt. No, wait,
Rebecca
Resurrection.
Hall.
Yeah, Rebecca Hall. Yes. Resurrection is teetering on being a straight up horror movie. It is more of a psychological thriller. But it does have some it is truly affecting and truly disturbing. And you I was on the edge of my fucking seat that entire movie. And it didn't help that it was like a 10:30 in the morning showing, so no one else was there. It's also a movie that didn't get, you know, got some distribution. Like I was lucky because it's Shutter, a Shutter exclusive, in the same way Watcher was. Um, but yeah, it's not like it's not a fun horror movie. It is bleak and disturbing, but that's also in my top 5
Well,
of the
that's
year.
another one of those like, oh look, Rebecca Hall is giving an amazing
Yes,
performance in a
there
movie
is.
literally nobody will watch. But
Yeah,
like
there
he is
is a
so fucking
one
unbelievable.
one broken sequence in that movie, that's just a close-up of her face as she's giving the exposition of the entire movie, and it is one of the best performances I've seen this year. But yeah, in terms of modern horror, I still need to see Bodies by His Bodies. I still need to see Barbarian, which I think is on HBO Max.
Just
I
got
need
at
to
it. Yep.
Yeah, I need to see Pearl. I need to see Smile.
I hear
It's just,
Smile's a lot of fun.
yeah. I want to see. This is coming out in next month, but Bones and All looks interesting. I've heard it described as a um comparable to a movie I had that's on my list. So if you don't mind, I think I'm going to go through because I haven't been as good as recent years, but that's because been working a lot and doing my own movies or short films. So I've been too busy to really like sit down and watch a lot of horror movies, but I have 17 that I've watched. Actually more than that because I don't have some of these I don't have some of these added, but I'll go with the first one, Maniac, the 1980 William Lustig, just wonderful performance from the main guy. I gotta look, I gotta look this up, uh, but yeah, he's fantastic. It's one of those, definitely a nod to Psycho. Also, is a movie that is known primarily for its effects. Tom Savini did the effects work on it, and he is in the movie getting it the worst of all. It's in those like compilations of best kills that you'll find. Um, then I watched the 1988 Blob, which is fun and totally punk rock and anti-authoritarian. Like all the cops and government people are shitty and get theirs. Um, yeah, that was that. It was the first time watching it too. Which stars Vinny's brother from Entourage, Kevin Dillon, which I I feel bad for Kevin Dillon in a sense. Just for the fact that on Entourage, he plays the older brother of a much more famous actor, which is exactly what his life is in real life. And
Well, that's the difference between you and me. I refuse to feel anything about anybody involved in Entourage.
what about Mark Wahlberg?
Won't do
Yeah.
it. I will feel nothing.
But okay, then I watched Michael Mann's The Keep, which is kind of a like I was not surprised when I learned that this movie was cut down from like I believe a 3 or 4 hour cut, because it seems like they go through a lot of lore, yet yet it seems very incomplete still. But it makes sense that they basically butchered the movie. Scott Glenn, Ian McKellen, and Gabriel Byrne are all in this movie. It's fun, and it's basically Nazis. It's basically that kind of part of when Nazis were getting really into the occult. Basically, it's kind of the beginning of Hellboy. Like Nazis are trying to bring back some kind of big evil.
And then America invents a super soldier serum so we can fight back against them.
Yeah, sure. I guess that's
they did that right after they stole the Ark of the Covenant.
It's just gonna keep on doing those references.
I'm out of
Nazi supernatural. I feel like there's a bunch of them
though. Before you know it, they'll be teaching your child in the basement at pupil reference.
You're just going to app pupil.
Yeah.
You're not even doing, you're going for a straight up drama now. Then I went over to Q the Winged Serpent, a fun giant monster movie from Larry Cohen, did The Stuff. David Carradine is in it. Richard Roundtree, Michael Moriarty. It's one of the few giant monster movies of this era, not from Japan, that I feel are actually look good in terms of the effects. Even though it's super low budget. They do a lot of claymation. They do a lot of stop motion stuff. You'll also notice at the very end, if you've seen the 1998 Godzilla, 1998 Godzilla stole its last shot from this fucking movie, like wholesale.
That's not surprising. There's not a lot of original or good ideas in that movie.
That's a lot of fish. I then watched Funhouse.
I'm gonna put a quick pause while we're on the subject of my best boy. I did watch Shin Godzilla.
I hear it's very good.
It is maybe my favorite Godzilla movie I've ever seen. So I do want to throw that out. It was one of the few I had just not watched for some reason. I think for obvious reasons, it wasn't easy to find in this country. A couple things about it that just make it cool. One, it is not about Godzilla. It is not about Godzilla fighting monsters. It is about the Japanese government bureaucracy of trying to do national aid and disaster relief while Godzilla is just destroying the city in the background. So it is a lot of shots in an office while people are talking, while in the background through the windows, Godzilla is just destroying the city. It's very funny. Two, it's made by the guy who made Evangelion. There's a lot of visuals in it, clearly designed by a guy who has an animation background. So it is a very visually engaged, like it is what a treat on the eyes that movie is. Like it is a fucking gorgeous, weird, nightmarish movie. Like, it is the most horrifying Godzilla's ever been, because he is the natural disaster destroying this community. And then 3, it's also really fucking funny. Highly recommend. Like, it's a 90-minute movie, just like the perfect amount of time. What a great fun Godzilla movie.
Yeah, I think even in the I think they definitely went away from the whole Godzilla is a natural disaster akin to the nuclear bomb, as in the first one.
Yeah, they
But
got away from it being an allegory in general. Because there's some where it's about industrialization. It's not even about the nuke. It's about nature versus machines. That's the Mecha Godzilla. Like, Godzilla at his best is an allegory for other stuff.
yeah,
It's why the American ones just don't get it. As much as I like that big boy, they just don't get the core of what Godzilla could be. They took all the wrong lessons from all the old Godzilla movies. Shin Godzilla is a good allegory, right? It's about the failure of government. And Godzilla is the thing they're failing at time and time and time and time and time again.
Right.
Like, it is brought up, like, this keeps happening. Why do we fail every time this happens? Like, why is it so hard for us just to build a plan to deal with this, and enact it? Instead, we're like trying to figure out. It's very funny in that way. But
and
also,
then they
Godzilla
create
is
the
terrifying.
Jaeger program.
Well, I mean, they are doing Ultraman in the same universe now, and it's
So
going to
that-
cross
okay.
over with Godzilla. So Shin
that is-
Ultraman is part of the Shin Godzilla universe.
What does Shin mean? Like, what is that supposed to be? Because I think I knew at some time what that meant, but I can't remember. Or what that was supposed to be like a reference to.
It's like new.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's some like new, just off of a quick Google search. It could mean like true. It also has like God undertones. So like true as in like the true word, or like the true meaning, would be an interpretation. I'm sure new is just what makes sense. Like, hey, this is just the new version of this, and we're building a new Toei universe. Is kind of what he's doing.
Shin Ultraman supposed to be as dark as Shin Godzilla?
It's going to be a little bit more straightforward, because the Godzilla one is interesting, like I said, because it's not about really Godzilla, right? Like, it's blatantly about government official. Like, none of the characters have names. They're all just bureaucrats, and you just follow them. And it's not about Godzilla. Allegedly, the Shin Ultraman movie is going to be more true to like Ultraman. You are going to follow Ultra. Well, you're going to follow like the aliens, and like it's gonna be a little bit more true, but it is still going to be grounded in reality. Like, that is what the kind of sell is that it's very much, look, it is a fantasy world, but it is a fantasy world that does have rules, and like there is a governing body, and like there is bureaucracy to deal with.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's yeah, I'll probably have to check out Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman when that comes out on VOD.
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving on, I watched, and by the way, the Blob to, a lot of these I watched on Criterion's 1980 horror block, which is just fantastic. Actually, I think one of these, I forgot to include another one called Lair the White Worm, which is a fun from Ken Russell, about basically a snake lady come into town and fucking shit up.
We've all been there.
Yeah. I would say of these, that would be one to check out, just as like, because it's really fucked up, but it's also like it's like, and it knows it's goofy. It took me a while because it's like, it's a British movie. You can't, so like the humor you might not get at first. But after a while you're just like, oh, this is a comedy. Okay. It also has Hugh Grant and oh god, Doctor Who. Which Doctor Who am I thinking of? The one after Matt Smith.
The one who's in Paddington, Peter Capaldi.
Yeah, so it's so you can kind of think of Paddington 2 as a Lair of the White Worm reunion.
It could be that his character has seen some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It also has a Ken Russell uh uh staple, which is naked nuns. Like that's just a thing he likes. Um okay, then there's Dream Demon, which is my least favorite movie that I saw of all these. It's just a rip off of Nightmare on Elm Street. That's all it is. It's their version of Nightmare on Elm Street.
I
Um,
mean, it's the best and the worst thing about horror movies is for every
yeah,
good one, there's 2,000 copycats that
yeah,
utterly fail in trying to recreate what that one was
yeah,
doing,
and maybe like three that are good.
or at
That's
least come up with like one idea that is like
yeah,
contributing to something.
yeah,
But for the most part, it is all just trivial.
yes. Well, that's the trouble with triples.
Mm.
That was a Star Trek reference. Um, then I got Near Dark, Catherine Bigelow's fantastic vampire movie with Bill Pullman, Lance Hendrickson. Yeah, it's just fucking rad. It does some great stuff with the vampire lore, but ultimately it's just a bunch of like punker, redneck guys going around the southeast and just fucking up bars and all that. It's really cool. Um then I watched Pumpkinhead, which is, by the way, these are great double features. Lance Hendrickson double features. Great one is Near Dark and Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead, just a really scary, sad movie. Directed by, and not just the effects, directed by Stan Winston, who you would
Oh,
know as the
yeah.
guy who made the alien costume, as well as a lot of other things. Like Stan Winston is
Special effects master.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
yeah, him and Rick Baker, like those are the two top ones. Briefly getting out of the 80s, it seems like most of mine are 80s, but like I'm gonna be honest, that was the funnest time for horror. Like it wasn't like you could talk about which era was scariest. The fucking 80s were hit the ground running. I think they were aware of what to do with special effects enough. Um, they knew like which buttons to push, but also knew they needed to make it fun to get people into the theaters. Which, by the way, I didn't talk about the Fun House, which is Toby Hooper's follow up to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's a kind of a slow movie. It doesn't get into like the actual horror stuff until like about halfway through the movie.
That's how I feel about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which I love, but like I
yes,
do feel like that movie is so much slower to get into. Well, it's also not actively trying not to be as scary as the first one.
yeah.
But
Well,
I
I will
wish
say
it had
this.
more scares.
I will say this about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It does have an early scene of Leatherface chopping up dudes. This one, like literally, you don't know what the danger is again until like more than halfway through the movie. Like you don't know what kind of horror it is because they don't actually give you the horror. They just walk you through this carnival. But here's the thing, it looks good. There's like one fantastic like crane shot that's a oneer uh of people leaving the carnival. That's fantastic. Um but yeah, Pumpkinhead, then to the Vincent Price's The Tingler,
Love that
which
movie.
God, the movie is fantastic. William Castle. I should have paired this with House on Haunted Hill, another great movie. But I think The Tingler is the better one of them because of how ridiculous the premise is, but also how serious Vincent Price knows how to sell these movies.
And you were, of
Uh,
course, talking about the 1999 House on Haunted Hill.
you know what? I think this podcast is over. Uh,
I only watch horror movies that have Chris Kattan in them, so that's the only one I know of.
So this and
Monkey Bones.
Monkey Bones. He was in that Goldberg Killer Santa movie.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
I feel like I should know what that's called, and I feel
Yeah.
bad I don't.
Oh, not to be confused with the 50 other Killer Santa movies out there. Um, but then I went on to The Hidden, which is a 1980s movie with Kyle MacLachlan, where him and this LA cop are trying to hunt down a string of guys who just seem normal but then go crazy. It's an alien. They're controlled by alien. And Kyle MacLachlan, look, this is in the trailer. Kyle MacLachlan's also an alien. It's just fun. It's more of an action movie. I think it's it teeters the same line that They Live does, in that it's a horror movie, but ultimately you're there for the action.
And yeah, there's not like scares in They Live. There's nothing like that jumps up and like scares you. It's just kind of creepy.
Yeah. Okay. Then we got Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. Have you ever heard this movie?
I have not.
It is a fascinating TV movie. So it's not very gory, but it there are kills in it that are like, fucked up. They just mainly happen off screen. But it's about like this small posse of guys who go after a mentally disabled man, played by the bad guy from Darkman, who, because they think that he hurt a little girl, but it turns out that he was saving her from a dog attack.
Sure.
So he hides in a scarecrow. They kill him. They just blast the shit out of him. 4 dudes with shotguns just blowing the hell out of this guy. And then they go on trial. Like, look, he had a pitchfork. We had no choice. They planted the pitchfork, by the way. So then a scarecrow just kind of shows up at the guys' houses, and then they die in more or less Final Destination ways. But I think it's a good it's good to check out. It's for as little as there's very little scarecrow in the Scarecrow movie, but it is genuinely creepy. So yeah,
sure, like a vengeful spirit kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that. But also, my friend thought I was crazy for thinking this. One of the bad guys is a grown man who works for the post office who never takes off his postal uniform. So that's a red flag, right? I'm sorry. That is a red flag. If you never take off your uniform.
I mean, how do you know when you're working or not? Is he always delivering the mail?
God damn it. Okay. All right. I guess I'm just the crazy one here. It's starting to sound like Alex Jones. Oh, the mailman. Okay. Then the Velvet Vampire, basic erotic vampire.
I believe that's pronounced the Velveteen Rabbit.
Yeah. But it is kind of your basic erotic vampire movie. Takes place in the California desert. It's fun. I would definitely say check it out. Then this was fun. I went to Iowa City at Film Scene to see this movie, Evil Dead 2. And I had forgotten just how great Evil Dead 2 actually was. And to see it in a theater with people was a wonderful experience.
I rewatched the 3 of those at the end of summer and was truly reminded how much I love all 3 of those. Like the Evil Dead to Army of Darkness as a trilogy is maybe it's legitimately as beloved to me as Star Wars is. Like, I sincerely love those 3 movies as just like I can watch any other or all of these at any given, like, one of these is on TV. You know what? I kind of want to watch all of them. So then I'm just going to like watch through all 3 of them. They're all short, and after the first one, they're all a lot of fun. The first one is not fun. The first one is a good, scary movie. I find it upsetting in ways that are very fun and enjoyable, but there's nothing lighthearted about the first one.
No, they were legit making a horror movie, like a straight up scary movie. And I think the budget isn't a hindrance to it. I think it actually adds 100% to how scary the movie is, because it is just this grimy look, similar to Texas Chainsaw.
But that's why I think the second one will be the one I prefer the most, just because now I have a budget. I'm gonna make it goofy.
Oh no,
I'm not
and
going to make it scary. I'm not going to I'm going to double down on the comedy and the slapstick, and we're actually going to take out most of the scares. Like, let's
I'll
just have a
push
good
back.
time.
I'll push back on it, saying like I do genuinely think it's goofy, but it is scary at times. I think especially that early part where it's just Bruce Campbell trying to deal with the fact that he had to carve up his girlfriend. Like
It is shocking after the success of that franchise that like it did not spawn a whole genre of like live action cartoon horror.
I think that I think they just the ones that tried to the horror comedies that came after it, um, either get something like a Dead Alive, which I don't know where that comes into scale, but I think that was also part of that independent scene outside of our country in New Zealand, and just like Peter Jackson's sensibilities. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of those horror comedies that came after Evil Dead 2 were more concerned about the comedy parts than the horror part. And I think that that's why Evil Dead works, is because it it uses the gags of some completely sick stuff. And it in doing so works as a comedy and as a horror movie. I think you got to focus on both of them. I would use Shaun of the Dead as a good example too, because the zombie stuff is 100% serious. Like they're not. I mean, there's some sight gags, but the zombies are acting like real zombies. Like they're a legit threat to everybody in a very specific way. So I think that that's why Evil Dead 2 works, and that why nobody after that was able to make
Well,
something.
and I'll think even just to get more granular about it, I think what Evil Dead and Shaun of the Dead both do that almost none of the other ones get right is the horror is part of the joke format. So like the
Yeah.
zombie stuff is part of the setup for a punchline. Now a lot of those setups are because of like what zombies are supposed to do, right? So you have a presupposed I know how this ends, and then the punchline is a twist on that, right? Like Evil Dead does the same thing of like, I know there should be a jump scare here, but we're gonna make this jump scare like we're gonna make it so much goofier than you could ever imagine because Bruce Campbell's biggest inspiration is the Three Stooges, right? So we're gonna lean like yes, the horror element, but we're gonna do it as if it's being done by so like it uses the horror sincerely so it can make a punchline. And the other ones, it's like we have horror and we have comedy, but they don't they're so separated. They don't use the horror to make the jokes. They use horror to scare you. They use comedy to make you laugh, but they don't mingle. It's hard. It's difficult. It's why there aren't many good ones.
Well, and I think there are a lot of ones that uses their version of the horror, but it's like say later Freddy movies. But the problem is like it gets too silly. To where the horror is not effective and the comedy is just kind of cheesy. But
Us, I think, is very funny. I think that movie makes me laugh quite a bit and is also pretty damn scary.
Well,
like
I think
a modern kind of thing.
Well,
Jordan
I think
Peele
the thing
does it
is
well.
like story wise, it's a horror movie, but you still got Jordan Peele, who is a trained comedian who
He just has a sense of humor. Yeah,
he just has that sensibility in him. Which, by the way, have you seen Wendell and what's the animated movie?
Wendell and Wild.
Yeah, I need to see that.
It's very good. It's like very the script is a little slapdash and it's very go 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 go. It's really just pounding in jokes. Again, it's like 88 minutes, so like it's just hitting you with jokes. But beyond that, it is some of the best stop motion. I mean, this is the first movie the guys made since Coraline. And it shows
wasn't Paranorman after Coraline?
Same studio, but not the same director. This is the guy who directed like Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline, and like he hasn't directed anything since Coraline.
Okay.
He left Studio Leica. So this is the first thing he's made since then, and it shows. Like there's just truly some unbelievable stop motion stuff in this. It's also very I mean this positively. I'm not trying to sound negative. It's very black in a way that's very interesting. It didn't feel forced or exploitative. It just felt like, oh, this was written by people who understand the Black community.
Well, Key and Peele are two of the
Jordan,
writers at least.
Jordan Peele wrote it. Like he co-wrote it with the director. So the two of them wrote it.
Okay. I thought Key was in there. Are they just doing something together?
They're just the voices.
Just the voices?
But Jordan Peele like wrote the movie.
Right.
And it shows. It's got that energy of like a Key and Peele thing, obviously. It's also pretty dark, but the scares are scary. It is mature. It is adult.
All right, I'll definitely sit down and watch that while I carve some pumpkins.
And again, it's 88 minutes. It is a short. It's an animated thing, right? So like it is breezy, and you can just kind of like it. Just I love a short movie. It's just
right
hour and a half. Keep it under.
Okay, so moving on from my stuff, I then watched a movie called Demons, which is directed by Mario Brava's son, and one of the producer and co-writer of this is Dario Argento. It's fucking crazy Italian zombie movie. Like it. Here's the thing: Italian horror movies just like hit differently than any others. They like to go all fucking out on stuff like this. I would say if you're a fan of Evil Dead 2, like this is a good one to pair it with because it has this and a lot of the ridiculousness is sincere because it's fucking Italians. Like that's just like how they are. But it's basically a zombie outbreak in a movie theater. And that is the least interesting thing happening in this fucking movie. So yeah, I would definitely say watch Demons. Also Motel Hell. If you're a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, it's a perfect double feature. Is Motel Hell and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
I love Motel Hell.
It is fantastic. It just that and by the way, they both have chainsaw fights.
Yes.
And by the way, another movie I'm going to be talking about soon has chainsaw fights. So I'll be talking about that.
I'm watching an anime right now that also has a lot of chainsaw fights.
Is it because the entire man is a chainsaw?
Well, most of him is a chainsaw. And it's because he's possessed by a chainsaw demon. It's complicated. Chainsaw Man fucking rules, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever visually looked at.
I'll have to watch it. Then I go to one of my favorite movies of all time, A Bucket of Blood. The Roger Corman, Dick Miller classic about a guy who is lonely and wants to be an artist, accidentally kills a cat, covers it in clay, and then passes it off as his own artwork. He's never malicious in the movie, even when he's at the beginning, he's not malicious. Even his first kill of a person in the movie is by accident, but then it's just like, oh, I guess I'm gonna put fucking clay in it and make it one of my statues. It's funny. It's really funny. It's from the writer of Death Race 2000, so you could definitely see like the writer is really into satirizing culture. In A Bucket of Blood, it's in Death Race 2000, it's basically American entertainment culture, that kind of thing, the bread and circuses of it all. In A Bucket of Blood, it's satirizing beatnik culture. Then I watched a French movie, and one of the more current movies I saw, Knife Plus Heart, which is a French movie about a gay porn studio being targeted by a serial killer. And one of the serial killer's weapons is a dildo with a blade in it. Now, it's actually not as silly as that description makes it sound. It's actually very
sexy,
touching.
Oh,
and
erotic.
Yeah, erotic. No, it is. It's French, dude. It's just all over the place, but it works very well. And it's one of the better art horrors I've seen in a while. I'm gonna say like blows A24 out of the fucking water there, because a lot of A24 horror now is kind of still has that boring gray hue but you're supposed to take it seriously. That's why they do that. I don't know, like that. That's just one of the things. Even though A24 has made some really great horror movies, I think I'm just, I think it's the branding of their horror stuff that gets to me.
I think
Uh,
that's fair.
yeah. Um, like how Men was supposed to be so important, but it's just like this. Yeah, it's obvious. The Apple Eve. Yeah, this is. I know what you're trying to get at here.
Especially because like they were bettered by a movie doing the same subject matter but like doing it better.
Which one?
Women Talking,
Oh, I haven't seen that one
also
yet. I've
starring
heard some
Jesse
good
Buckley.
things. Yeah. Um,
But it's about the horrors that befall the women of essentially like a Mennonite and Amish community,
yeah.
and the horrors that are enacted upon them.
I feel like there is a epidemic of horror movies right now that are sci-fi in the case of Don't Worry Darling, where it's just like it feels like they think they're being profound, when in actuality it's because I'm gonna be honest. When I saw the trailer for Don't Worry Darling the first time, like I gave it the benefit of the doubt because I was just like, okay, this looks like it's a simulation movie, but that's too easy. That's too easy of a way to go with this. So it's probably something else. Nope, it's a fucking simulation. Like,
Yeah, it's weird because I just feel like a couple high profile movies have just flopped. I mean, I wanted to give Don't Worry Darling all the benefit of the doubts because of how much I love Booksmart, right? Like that's Olivia Wilde's directorial debut.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I was like, oh, what a massive,
Booksmart
like what a great debut, like for a film director. So I wanted to give this one all the benefit of the doubt. And then beyond the bad publicity, that is all well deserved. And again, bad publicity is probably why half the people saw this movie, because from what I come to understand, the movie is so bad that there's no other reason to see it, other than like you wanted to see the train, you wanted to go to the tracks to see the train wreck. Like, but there's very like I hear there's nothing in that movie worth anything, which is a bummer. But for every one of those we get for shitty sci-fi, we have a Aronofsky's Doom. So like it goes both ways.
Aronofsky?
Sorry. What's his nuts? The dude who just directed Dune.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was just like, Aronofsky didn't fucking right. Correct. I mean, he kind of did with Noah. No, he didn't. That's not comparable. Um, although that was him trying to do a fantasy epic.
Villanueva or Nuevo. I'm never gonna say his name right. The guy who directed Harry Potter 3.
No, that's Alfonso Cuarón.
You're right. I'm getting them all mixed up. I don't even know. I'm tired.
All right. Well, I'm gonna close to finishing up my list. The next one I did was Mandy, which I think is a great double feature with Knife Plus Heart. In that I forgot how just out like fucking psychedelic it was. There is very little plot in this movie, and it's mainly visuals, and that's not a bad thing. That's fantastic. Have you seen Mandy yet?
I have not.
You have not. It's definitely, I think, like brought people back to Nicolas Cage as an actor. And he was initially supposed to be the bad guy in the movie, and watching it, and not only because like he is so good as the protagonist, but Linus Roach, who I think a lot of people will recognize as Batman's dad in Batman Begins. Yeah, he's great as this like asshole 70 like early 80s cult leader, hippie Jesus freak is kind of the way. Also Bill Duke is in this, and I love me some fucking Bill Duke.
I am a Bill Duke fan as well. I understand that one.
Have you seen Deep Cover?
Nope.
I think it might be his first feature movie. I'm not sure. But it is one of the drug crime movies from that era that is much better than Scarface. And I'm gonna be honest, there are a lot of them that are much better than Scarface.
Oh yeah.
I would say King of New York is also fantastic. But
Oh,
just
and yeah, he directed this too. All right.
Mandy? No.
Sorry, no, Deep Cover.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it was his he wasn't he's not even in the movie.
yep.
Um I don't remember because I know he talked about doing television directing in like the 70s and 80s. But yeah. Anyway, and the last three movies that I have just saw are the three basket case movies. Which are you familiar with those movies?
No.
Okay, the first one is a grimy, very low budget in the same way Evil Dead is. The first one. This one, takes place in New York, primarily in Times Square. So it definitely has that feeling, kind of a, pre-Giuliani taxi driver feel to it. But it's about this relationship between two brothers trying to deal with the trauma of being separated. And one of them is a blob of flesh that is with sharp teeth that will rip your fucking face off.
What's in the basket?
Um, it's very good, and the next two have definitely more of a budget, but that's in comparison to the first one. The second one has just so many more freaks and stuff like that they highlight throughout the movie, and that's just really fun. To I would also suggest from Frank Henlotter, the director of this, Brain Damage, which has a great like little puppet thing. Um, but yeah, I would say give Basket Case a shot. It's on the Criterion's 1980 80s collection. So
I've seen Brain Damage. It's been a long time, but I have definitely seen that one.
yeah, that is a fun one too. But I do feel like if you've seen Brain Damage, then you kind of get an idea of what you're getting into with the Basket Case movies.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would make sense.
Yep. And yeah, I'm planning on watching more movies. I just got the 4K of Halloween, and I haven't watched the original in a long time. So
Well, I just got a 4K myself. Target has the Steelbook 40th
Oof.
anniversary edition of ET.
Okay, that's awesome.
I actually don't own. I had never owned, for whatever reason. ET is not one I own a physical copy of, which is just so odd. Of like all of the Spielberg blockbusters, like the ones I don't own are ET, which I've now fixed, and I don't own a physical copy of any of the Indiana Jones movies. Which is
I think those are. I think both of those are ones that they always seem to come out with a release of. So it's one of those things where am I double dipping or
do I want to get this collection? Or I think there's even like 3 different box sets. There's 3 Evil Dead box sets currently. None of them have all the movies because Army of Darkness is owned by a different studio, which is a nightmare.
I had to. I wanted to watch The Evil Dead before seeing Evil Dead 2. It's not streaming anywhere, so I bought the 4K. It's not coming until December. So it's just bizarre.
Speaking of physical releases, American Movie got a physical release, and I do want to give a shout out to Mike Schenk, the acid dripping best friend in American Movie. He passed away last month.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, I was a real bummer of just like I hadn't really crossed my mind thinking of that guy passing away, but like it really bummed me out for a week of just like, oh, that dude was like the best friend a dude could ask for. Just
have you ever seen Coven?
No, I hear it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely like better than what you would think from watching the documentary. And I believe it's on YouTube. Um, you would think like they would put that in with the DVD, the Blu-ray and or release of it, but
It is on the current one.
okay, that's
Like
good.
the Blu-ray that just is getting released has it on it.
Good, because you probably get a little more cleaned up, even though I believe they shot it on video or Super 8 film, something like that. Like it's still not going to look great, but it's just a small, I believe, like 45-minute movie. Um, anyway, yeah. Uh, so now, now we got through all that. Anything else you want to discuss before we take
I
off?
guess the
Anything?
only other thing I don't know if we've talked about it yet. I don't even know if you've watched it yet. And also it's a thing I highly recommend to everybody watch. Have you watched The Rehearsal? Have we talked about The
I have
Rehearsal?
not. Well, no, you know what? I saw the first half of the first episode. I haven't gotten back to it yet.
Sure. It is 6 episodes. The first episode is the longest at like 46 minutes. For the most part, they're between 22 and 30 minutes. So it's easy to binge. It is 3 hours and 15 minutes to watch the entire show from beginning to end. Um, it's the scariest thing I've seen all year. Nothing will be scarier. It's so viscerally upsetting. And frankly traumatic, that I just can't stress enough how much people should watch it for Halloween, because it's upsetting. It's so upsetting.
I'll have to watch it.
I know you're
At some
probably
point.
baffled as to why I am talking in those terms.
No, I've seen enough for Nathan for you to be like, okay, I could see how he really gets to a part of humanity that is all too real. I think
That's
is
yeah. So the appeal of the Nathan Fielder stuff, if you're not too familiar, of like Nathan For You, his partner, like creative partner, is John Wilson, who does How To with John Wilson on HBO as well, which is another along this line of like really tapping into deep awkward parts of humanity in a way that is so relatable and so uncomfortable and upsetting. This goes beyond into something that I don't think he's touched on in any of his previous work. Um, that truly I have like lost sleep up. Like I finished this the week it came out. Like the week it was finished, I just watched all of it. And I have not stopped thinking about it and have lost sleep over the finale. Like there is some truly upsetting revelations that happen on that show that truly have haunted me in ways I didn't think a comedy show could. Again, it's some of the hardest things I've ever laughed at, but the last episode is not funny. It's incredibly depressing and everyone should watch it.
um after Halloween, I'll do that because I still got a lot to get through. I want to get through the Universal monster movies. Tomorrow I'm hosting a horror movie night at the local bar Octopus on College Hill.
Apologies, by the time this come out, that won't be tomorrow.
Yes, that's true. But we're gonna. I am premiering my latest short film there, so we'll see how that reaction does. But there's also see what the reaction to that is. But there are two other short films from fantastic filmmakers, from Iowa that we're going to be showing, which I can't wait to show those things because they're truly fantastic. And yeah, I still need to watch Halloween on 4K. So yeah,
well, good news. Tomorrow's Halloween, so
yeah, yes.
Set it
And
aside.
then the day after that is November 1st, which is Devil's Night. I believe that's what it is in the Crow. It's the day after Halloween, right? Or is it the day before?
Oh, I do not like The Crow, so I do not know.
Really?
Yeah, I no. Brandon
That's
Lee, bad actor.
You need to watch Drive. Drive is fantastic, and he is fantastic in it. No, wait,
was
that's
he
Mark
Oscar
Dacascos.
Isaac?
That's Mark Dacascos. Never mind. But I love The Crow. But okay, all right. Anyway, I guess that's all we have to discuss. I think next time we're gonna start the podcast the usual way and try to talk about a movie.
Yeah, we'll narrow it down. I guess the other thing before we wrap up, our release schedule, it's been hectic. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
It's gonna be crazy and hectic. We've still got to sort it out. I would say a lot of the reason Josh has been working on his film, I've been working on a little side project called Trying to Have a Child. So we're gonna figure out how to keep going, but it is a releases for a little bit are going to be scattered as I am getting prepared to welcome an unholy seed into this living nightmare that we call waking life. So.
And by the way, I like the way that what did you say? You said a project of your own.
Yeah, my own little project,
your
little
own
side project.
I think I'm going to call unprotected sex that from now on. Yep.
Hey, new semen
baby,
just dropped.
What?
New fertilized egg just dropped.
But yeah, and we have a pretty big backlog of stuff that we need to, I need to sit down and edit some stuff.
We need to cover. We want to figure out how to do some live stuff. I have a couple pitches to make at some point in the near future. We have stuff we want to do. I don't want to stop doing this. We just might have to work out a different schedule or a work-life balance situation.
Yeah, that is definitely, and I'm also going to be going into, I'm sure it's the same for you, going into holiday season. Both our jobs are going to be fucked.
I'm less concerned about my work and more concerned about all of the free time I'll have no more coming up, all of the time not for work that I have that is about to go away from me forever. Goodbye video games, goodbye movie theaters. It's going to be a few years before I get to go back to you guys.
Oh yeah, you better not be that fucker bringing a baby to the rated R movie.
Well, depends on the movie. If I want to go see Tar still, and I think I could take a baby to Tar.
Oh, you didn't see Tar?
I didn't get to go today, but I'm going to try to go with this week. I really want to go see that one.
Well, you gotta carve out 8 hours to watch that movie.
I'll do it.
Yep. No, I really want to see that movie too. It's just not going to show anywhere here, so I might have to wait until it comes out on VOD.
And I've got it on 6 theaters up here. I just got to pick the one with the most opportune showing for me. Oh, living in the not Iowa is great.
You fuck. Anyway, I do want to promote my stuff a little bit. I have a short film out called Help from My Friends that you can find on the YouTube channel 4th Street Trash. 4th is is the number 4th, and it is a short crime movie. I had a lot of fun making it. Everybody did a good job with it. So I I'm very proud with how it turned out. It's also a thing of like, taking that and going beyond it, learning from, any mistakes that happen. But overall, it's still something I'm proud that we were able to
Hardest thing to do is to not just make something, but then to release it. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of that way with this one, but I find a lot of stuff in the editing process helps. When we get all these scattered puzzle pieces and then like you think they don't go together and then this actually fits. But that's 4th Street Trash. Comment on it, let me know what you thought. Anyway, guess that's it for I Love This Flick. Until next time, do we want to just pick a movie right now, see what we got here?
Give me 1 second to get that list popped open and we can do that.
Yeah, pop that list, baby.
I don't know if I ever told you, I did see Moonage Daydream.
Yeah, how'd you like it?
I got to go do an IMAX showing again because I don't live in Iowa.
Fucker.
So 1, it ruled.
Yeah.
2, it comes out on Blu-ray November 8th. So you can watch it soon enough. And it's got got some of the best, most coked out footage of David Bowie I've ever seen. Like it just shows a lot of him in his coke era more than any other documentary I've ever watched. And I've watched quite a lot of David Bowie documentaries. This one is truly all stuff I hadn't seen before, so it was pretty cool.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I'll definitely check that out when I get a chance to. All right, here we are. Yeah, let's do Ghost Dog. Yeah, fuck it. Ghost Dog's a pretty great movie. Let's talk about that shit.
I'm down.
All right. Get into some Jim Jarmusch stuff. All right, we're gonna be talking about Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai.
With Saw Gerrera himself.
And Henry Sylvia.
Anyway, the movie fucking rules. If you haven't seen Ghost Dog, you should definitely watch Ghost Dog.
It's weird how that's Jim Jarmusch's most mainstream movie.
Yeah, it's one of the weirdest movies I've seen. Tonally, I loved it. I'm excited to talk about it.
No, me too. Especially since it combines several of my favorite genres together. Anyway, for I Love This Flick, I'm Josh Pfizer.
I'm Tanner Randall.
And keep watching movies, people.
Bye.